So we're going to be talking about the first Battle of Bull Run, which you can kind of tell by its name that obviously that's not the only battle at Bull Run. There was another battle that took place a year or so afterwards in basically the exact same spot. So this was fought in northern Virginia near the city of Manassas and by Bull Run River, which is why it is sometimes called Bull Run, particularly in the north, and it is actually called the Battle of Manassas, generally in the south. I believe it's more known as the actual visitor center. The battlefield is right now called the Manassas National Park. But the north was more likely to name a battle after a nearby body of water. Bull Run was kind of a stream, not exactly a river. Whereas the South was more likely to name their battles after the closest city. So basically, this was the first main battle after the attack on Fort Sumter, which basically started the war, declared war. This was a battle where both sides kind of thought this is going to be an easy win, very similar to the Revolutionary War, if you remember that. So it starts out near Manassas, and there's 30,000 Union troops, and there's actually a much smaller Confederate force that's there. And they attack, and they hold the line until reinforcements can come. The South does this. And one of the regiments that comes is Stonewall Jackson, who's actually named Thomas Jackson. He got his nickname Stonewall at this battle. Now, there's this thing in the Civil War called the Rebel Yell, which no one really knows what that sounded like since everyone from the Civil War has passed on. But the Southerners did this Rebel Yell. They were called the Rebels because they broke away from the Union, where they surged forward with screams and caused the Union troops to just panic and retreat. Now, when Stonewall Jackson's regiment was staying there, they still had less people there. And another Southern commander trying to get his troops going told them to go look at General Jackson. And he basically said, there's General Jackson standing like a stone wall. He's keeping his men there. He's keeping them from running and retreating. And that's how he got the name Stonewall Jackson. Stonewall Jackson was a little bit crazy, kinda, a little bit. His eyes were really crazy. But he really could inspire his men to do things that maybe otherwise they wouldn't want to do. And standing there against a force much bigger than your own and holding your ground and not retreating and having the guts to do that, he could get his men to do those things. Now, as we look at this, hopefully you've got those notes down. This is a painting of Stonewall Jackson holding his men in their positions and keeping them secure. At the battlefield, there is a statue of Stonewall Jackson. I went on my Nerd Tour 2.0. I went to Manassas Battlefield, which was really cool. And this is a statue actually kind of right when you walk out of the visitor center, because this is near the area where they said that comment about him. And you can see the actual inscription on the side. There stands Jackson like a stone wall. Again, how he got his name. One of the kind of mythic heroes for the South, for sure. Obviously, we look at Southern generals as possibly being very good at war, not necessarily fighting for the right reasons, for sure. You can see this is a picture of the battlefield I took. The battlefield was pretty large. This right here is the main visitor center when you walk in. A lot of the battle took place up here by a house, Henry House. This goes down. This is actually a road now right here. But you can see I'm up on a hill. I mean, the battle was pretty widespread in this area. It did not take place in, a small, compact area. All right, let me erase that. So this is just one of the numerous memorials that's up at these Civil War battlefields. You would have had people in the 1800s and the 1900s raise money to build these memorials, and they are all over the area. A little story, when we were in the cemetery at Manassas, I was very annoyed because this was when Pokemon Go was super popular, and there were people actually coming into the cemetery just to play Pokemon Go. And it made me really mad. I almost went teacher on them, but I didn't. I let them go. Now, one interesting thing about this is the fact that here's Manassas, okay, and here is Washington, D.C. That's really close. That is not far at all. When we actually drove from Washington, D.C. to Manassas, and I think it was maybe an hour or so. Obviously, we were in a car, and they weren't. But if you look, it's very close. So one interesting thing about Manassas, or Bull Run, is that because they were so close, a lot of people from Washington, D.C. actually came to the battle site to watch. Senators and their wives and families, and they brought picnics and champagne, and they all were sitting there because they wanted to watch when the Union defeated those Southern rebels and the war was over. They wanted to be there for that event. So you can imagine at a battle site, you've got all these people watching. The thing is that, of course, when the Union is trying to run away, it's basically just this crazy stampede, because not only are the Union soldiers trying to run away, but you also they kind of get involved in the middle of these civilians who had also come to watch, who are trying to run away. And it was kind of just a big mess. It was the bloodiest battle in American history up to that point. There will be a lot more coming after this, but this was the bloodiest battle at that time. When you think about it, all battles in the Civil War are going to be have a lot of casualties because both sides are Americans. It's not the Revolutionary War where one side is British and we count the casualties on the American side. Both sides of this war are Americans. But the Battle of Bull Run was a big wake-up call to the North, that maybe they had more people, but they needed a bit more experience, and that this was not going to be something where the South was just going to give up, and that they needed to do this. So Lincoln appoints George McClellan as head of the Union Army. One thing you will find about the Union Army is that they could not find a general that would actually do what he needed to do. Lincoln's going to go through many different generals trying to find one that will actually fight. That was one of the biggest problems that the North had in the Civil War.